Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Today I am going to present XSS. It stands for cross-site scripting. This presentation will cover what is XSS, root causes, exploitation process, and lastly prevention. What is XSS? Cross-site scripting, as known as XSS, is one of the most common application layer web attacks. XSS vulnerabilities target scripts embedded in a page that are executed on the client side rather than on server side. Root causes. Untrusted data enter a web application typically from a web request. That means when we are giving input any of web page form, then this data directly come to the application. The web application dynamically generate a web page that contain this untrusted data. That means when we got data from directly submit form and we store it to our database, and after that we are rendering that data to our web page. During page generation, the application does not prevent data from containing content that is executable by a web browser, such as JavaScript, HTML tags, HTML attribute, mouse event, etc. It means that when we rendering or generating any page, that time we are not filtering which are executable code or which are not executable code. So we have to do this, otherwise the problem will happen. Same origin policy not followed. That means when any request comes to browser, we are not adding any origin policy in the request or response header. Exploitation process. There are three types of exploitation process. The first process is reflected XSS or non-persistent. That means when any attacker added some of JavaScript code into the input type and submit that input, this action happen immediately. So this will do the attack in the same time. That means they can read cookie or edit some JavaScript, etc. This is not stored anywhere. In our second type, that is stored XSS or persistent cross-site scriptings. It means that when we added any JavaScript code into our form which are going to be submitted. When the form is submitted, the malicious code is stored in database, so that every time when that data is rendered to web page, the malicious code will run. Every time it will run. That means this malicious code we are storing in server database. That's why we are calling this type of attack is persistent. The last one is DOM-based XSS. We all know that we can add lots of validation using HTML tags. That means the input will take 100 character, not less than 2 character. When the page is rendered in a browser, using the browser development tool, we can inspect that input and we change that validation. That means we added now the 200 character, so that now user able to can submit 200 character data to server. This could be broken our server. This could be happening problem in our server side. This way, an attacker easily attacked XSS request. The last thing is prevention. If we follow these three things, then our majority problem will be solved for XSS. Let's see. Filter input on arrival. That means when any filter submitted from client side, we have to filter that value very precisely so that there is no unintentional data on that page. Then we are going to make sure this is filtered. Last thing is that encoded data on output. That means when we rendering any data, we are encoding those so that there is no executable code. The last thing is that use appropriate response header. That means when we sending data from server, we will add appropriate data there, appropriate header there. Thank you for stay or listening the presentation.